40 years ago, about 80% of the value of the S&P 500 companies was intangible assets, brick and mortar. Today, 85% or better of the worth of the S&P 500 is intangible assets, intellectual property, 85% plus.
Will you rank intellectual property as the most valuable asset? Why or why not? And this ties into the title of your book too. So,
well, let me take a step back. Okay, for all things considered, patents are most definitely the most valuable, the strongest protection that you can get, because they're the only protection against independent development. If there's something on the market and it can be reverse engineered, and we're talking technology, mechanical, electrical, or composition. Again, the only way that you can really protect that, if it's reverse engineerable, ascertainable from publicly available information, got to be a patent. But let's take a step back, if it's okay. Stop me if
no, go ahead. You're doing great, Mike. Thank you.
There's to be successful, a business really has to have certain essential elements. Okay, so it's got to have a mission. Most successful companies either are solving a problem or they're serving some sort of an identified need. They identify a need in a particular target market, and that's where the focus is. The mission is to solve that problem, fulfill that need. Okay. You got to have the right type of leadership, people that can identify that mission, identify the needs, and keep everybody on task. Then you need to have a team of people that have all the different skills that you need to run a company. And that's your advisors, your employees, people that you can leverage your expertise to. That kind of sets the boundaries. Then you need to have some certain foundational elements in place. You need to have the right type of legal foundation. Pick the right entity, have the right contracts in place. Make sure you own what you think you own. Do what you can to avoid liability to third parties, and protect your intellectual property. Okay, now you can have the best product or service in the world, and it doesn't do you any good if you don't have the systems in place to make it, produce it, get it out to your customers, bill for it, collect the money, keep track of it. You got to have the right type of marketing. Having that super product doesn't do you a dang bit of good if nobody knows about it. And you got to create the right type of relationships within the company, with your customers, and with investors. On top of that, you got to, as a company grows, it's going to need certain resources. Now, one of those resources is money. Okay, but generally, that money is needed to get other resources. There are alternatives to that. Now, you need to make sure you've got the resources that you need available when you need them. That making sense?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so you have to have that type of a foundation for a successful business. And then there's one more thing that you need, because all the successful businesses are going to have those things that I just talked about. You got to have a competitive advantage. There has to be something about your product or the way that you do things that attracts customers to you instead of going to your competition, or something that gives you better margins. So, that's the formula for being able to have a scalable business. Sometimes my mind.
No, take your time. You're doing great.
what do you think is going to happen when you have a competitive advantage? It starts making a difference in the marketplace. Competitors are going to pounce.
Mm-hmm.
They are going to adapt and adopt, which is a polite way of saying they're going to take your stuff.
Yeah.
So you've got to do something to keep them from doing that. And that's where the intellectual property protection mechanisms come in. You've got a whole toolbox full of these protection mechanisms. And they're designed to protect different types of intellectual property and provide different types of protection. And you want to apply those to your business. Now, that's not, you can have a competitive advantage in any aspect of your business. It doesn't necessarily have to be in your deliverable, your service or your product.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it could be in the business systems that you put in place. I mean, that's what Amazon is all about. They came up with, in essence, a fulfillment system.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what Uber's all about. It's all in systems. Now, the systems are really the tool that lets you scale. I mean, if you've got special expertise and you're applying it, if you're the only one that can apply it, there's only so big your business is going to get. So you've got to come up with a way to leverage that expertise. Let other people that you employ or have a contractual relationship with use that expertise. And you have to be able to control the quality of their work. That's how you scale. Okay, so we were talking, patents are one of those legal protection mechanisms that I was talking about. There's also trade secrets, trademarks, copyrights, mask works. Mask works relate to semiconductor layouts, the layouts of semiconductor chips. And quite frankly, that you don't see that used very much anymore because the technology kind of bypassed that form of protection. But you can start out by keeping something secret. Now, how do you leverage something that you keep secret? I mean, how can you let other people use it without giving away the secret?
Mm-hmm.
That's where the law of contracts comes in and licensing. Okay, that's where you make sure that anybody that has access to that secret is under a contractual obligation to keep it secret.
With an NDA or something like that, right?
That's the NDA,
Mm-hmm.
or you have a provision in another license. But basically, it's creating an obligation to keep the secret. Now, to have a trade secret right that's enforceable against third parties, you got to treat the information like it's a secret.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, you can be pretty well assured that the courts won't enforce rights against others. So what does that mean? It means you got to restrict access to it and have those written confidentiality agreements with everybody that has access to the information.
Would that mean, let's say you're dealing with a person who's got 30 employees, you get the NDA from that person. Do you have to get an NDA from everybody that works for them? And how would you even do that if that's true? Because you don't know all the 30 employees.
It depends. I mean, you can. Generally, what you would do is you would have the NDA, the obligation would be on the company, and you would make it the company's responsibility to make sure that anybody that got access to it through them, subject to the agreement, that they agreed to maintain the secret.
Yeah, basically, you would say such and such person and their such and such company that they own and all their employees.
And I mean, you would specifically say that they would restrict it to the employees that needed it to do the job, and that they would agree to be subject to the provisions of the agreement. In some cases, you would have them give you the identities of those employees. It depends on just how serious you are about keeping something secret.
Thank you, Mike. So, Mike, just going back to the original question, if you can just summarize it, would you rank intellectual property as the most valuable asset? Now, when I'm talking about most valuable asset, like on a balance sheet, you got your assets minus your liabilities, net worth, like you have
Well,
current assets, all that stuff, cash. Would you put intellectual property up there?
in a word, yes.
Mhm.
40 years ago, about 80% of the value of the S&P 500 companies was intangible assets, brick and mortar. Today, 85% or better of the worth of the S&P 500 is intangible assets, intellectual property, 85% plus.
Hmm.
So yeah, IP is
You know,
certainly a component. And the same is true around the world.
that is a
There are
crazy
other
statistic.
indexes that show the same thing.
That statistic is crazy. And we could probably talk more about this for hours, but just the first thing that came to my mind was when these investors are investing in companies and they're looking at, oh, here's the earnings for the quarter. And if they're smart, they're actually looking at the balance sheet. They still wouldn't have all the information because it's just a little section that says goodwill or whatever, but who's valuing that? Like it's totally subjective, a lot of that.
It is subjective, and it's tough to put a value on it. But a lot really relates to the credibility of the parties that are putting the information out.
Yeah.